Hello everyone and welcome to a general guide on how to beat really hard stages, for example EX challenge quests or even 100 evils quests with basically just free-to-play resources. So I have a team right here, but we're not going to talk about this team immediately. First we need to talk about a parallel memoria where we're going to talk about how to actually survive a bunch, because you're not really going to get anywhere until you can actually survive a bit. That's probably the number one thing you need to worry about. And to give you a quick overview, first we're going to talk about what you actually need to survive, how you can actually make a stall team. Once you have a stall team, then you actually worry about damage, and once you have all of those three things, then you win. So the first thing you need to figure out is how do we actually survive, and in order to do that we need memoria. We need specifically some really good defensive memoria, if possible, that give attack down to enemies, to multiple enemies at best. Of course, the absolute best one to do that is memoria. It gives both an enormous attack down against all enemies, but it also only has 5 turn cooldown at maximum break. What you want to do, however, is, as free-to-play, you probably don't have a bunch of these lying around. Just keep them at level 1 for now, so that you can at least use the regular effect, the normal effect, not even the MLB effect. And if you can get like 2 or 3, you're already perfect. So that you have 2 or 3 individual ones that might be level 1, but it doesn't matter, that you can just spread out on a bunch of characters. But what other memoria are out there? Because of course not everyone's going to have a meteor. There's also this one right here, which is an unlimited memoria, which similarly gives attack down to all enemies and could also charm them, but more important, the attack down 30% to all enemies. You can also already see, even though it's an unlimited memoria, just like meteor, it does less attack down with a way longer cooldown, so it's almost like meteor is way too good. But yeah, this is another attack down memoria on all enemies that you can use. We also have this, the Maiden's Grave. You see those skulls of enemy magical girls at the bottom of this lake? Yeah, those are the skulls of your enemies once you are done following this guide. This gives attack down 15% to all enemies for 3 turns, so it's like a spread out over multiple turns, which can also be pretty nice. So once again, pretty long cooldown because it's not meteor. This is a card that a memoria that you got for just playing the Green Chest Diviners like event. Maybe someday it's gonna come around again, but if you were already around during that time, you might have this one. What else do we have? We have this one, which is from an event that's currently running. It's in the event shop for the new Shizuku event. Sentimental Gaze is what they call it. It also does attack down over 3 turns. It also gives status aim resistance down, so it's just a better version of Maiden's Grave in basically every single regard. It's pretty good. It's definitely also another one to keep around, and I think it comes like MLB, which is also pretty good, so you can get to the maximum stats also pretty well. What else is there? Well, if we're looking past attack down, maybe you want some damage down memoria as well, which might also help out quite a lot. We have Let's Eat Together, which is actually a 3-star memoria. By the way, the reason I didn't show any other 3-star memoria on attack down against all enemies is because, as far as I know, there aren't any that do attack down against all enemies that are 3-star, that are unlimited for all people to use, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, we have this one right here, 3-star Quell Slash, which does damage down 40% to all enemies if it's maximum break, which is pretty good. It's a low-rarity memoria. You can just get this from the SP gacha or from just rolling any gacha. We also, of course, have Negotiator, also another unlimited memoria, damage down 50% to all enemies for 1 turn on a 5-turn cooldown. Also really, really good. And it also gives yourself status aim resistance up. Not super duper important in most cases, like to specifically use Negotiator for the status aim and resistance. You'll just use the Negotiator for the damage down, but I guess it's an added bonus to have something else on it, which is quite alright too. Another thing, if you were around during the Reincarnated Overlord Magnificently Thwart their conspiracy event, the re-event, you might also have this. I think it was in the event shop. It was in the event shop, yeah. Which does damage down to all enemies for 3 turns and also gives us resistance up. It's basically just Negotiator as small, a mini Negotiator, but across 3 turns, which is also pretty good. But yeah, you had to pick this up during the shop of the Rui event. So yeah, those are some good memoria to use. Why specifically do I keep going on about trying to get attack down and not really damage down? It's something that I say in all other videos that I usually make as well. Attack down is a lot more important than damage down. Why? Very quickly, just for a few seconds, I've done some maths. So the very standard way of calculating damage in this way is you take the enemy attack, when they attack you, you subtract from that your defense divided by 3, and whatever comes out from that equation gets multiplied with the modifiers, and that is the damage that someone deals. The minimum is 250. So let's say for example that the enemy has 20,000 attack and we have 12,000 defense, then we would take 16,000 damage. That's about 16,000 damage that we would take from this. Let's meter rain that enemy. Let's give them 50% attack down. That brings their 20,000 to 10,000. What happens then? 10,000, we're already only taking 6,000 damage. What is that? 50% attack down made us take even more than just the 50% less damage that you would expect. So we're taking 10,000 damage less instead of like half of that. But let's say, for example, the enemy has a base of 10,000 attack, which a lot of enemies in challenge quests, EX challenge quests, might actually have somewhere around 10,000 attack if they're like a lesser enemy or a medium type enemy. Maybe a support magical girl on the enemy team might have like somewhere around 10,000. Damage dealers might have somewhere around 15,000 maybe. So they might deal around 6,000 damage. But let's say we meter rain that enemy. Drops to 5,000, which is only 1,000 damage. Look at that, meter rain, 50% attack down gets us from taking 6,000 damage to only 1,000 damage. That's 1/6 of the damage, even though we're only giving them a 50% attack down. That is pretty crazy. So meter rain is pretty darn awesome. In general, attack down is pretty darn awesome because it gives you more than what it says on the tin. Down here I've also written down negotiator. Let's say, for example, once again the enemy has 20,000 attack and whatever, and we're now halving that. With negotiator, it just halves whatever comes out at the end. So this 16,000 gets halved, is 8,000. Wow. With meter rain, we got 6,000 instead of 8,000. Oh, it's actually better to have meter rain instead, or to have attack down instead. What if the enemy had 10,000 attack? Well, once again, the 6,000 damage just gets halved to 3,000. You know, up here, the 6,000 went to 1,000, which is 1/6. Here, it just gets halved. And the same thing if the enemy just has 5,000. If we were to take 1,000, it just gets halved to 500. So attack down is way better than damage down. Just a very quick overview. There's a little bit more that goes into that. For example, once buffs, especially damage buffs, come into play, then damage down actually becomes way worse, while meter rain is still really good. I keep saying meter rain when I really want to say attack down, but meter rain, attack down, what's the difference? What else do we have? Well, now that we know all of that, now that we know how we can give our characters any sort of survivability at all. I mean, there's some other memoria as well, but let me just show something. I have a team set up right here. So, for example, I have some characters that are really good at stalling. So we have Kako for heals, we have Madoka for some buffs as well. Don't have the space for it right here because that's supposed to be a support here, but if you go into 100 Evils quests, you get to take a 5th character with you, and I took Sana instead. Sana's also really good for stalling. Like Madoka is therefore having a heal on connect as well as giving a really good attack buff with her Magia. We have Oriko for some damage, and I mean, once Magia, she gets to survive a turn as well with her own evade, so that's really good as well. And we have Emily here because I like Emily. I mean, to be honest, also it's here for additional support. It's really nice if you can apply some dazzle to some enemies, which can help you out a little bit more in surviving. So this right here would already be a pretty good team to survive. And as you can see, I basically just spread around some of those memoria that I mentioned. I do have 3 meter rains, but you might have instead multiple level 1 negotiators. Maybe you have multiple of the splash party memoria. Right, I didn't even level this, but maybe because I just picked it up in a gacha literally right before this video. But you might have multiple of these that you can spread around between your characters. But if your characters have like at least 1, maybe even 2 of these defensive memoria spread out between, you can basically just rotate at least 1 or 2 of them each turn, which is kind of absurd. The best case scenario is having like 5 max limit break meter rains. And you could use 1 meter rain every single turn, which basically makes you invulnerable. What else did I put on here? Well, just some regular defensive memoria. I'm going really, really hard on the defensives by putting some defensive memoria on here. This is another defensive memoria that was just recently in the gacha. It's also a low rarity one, but it's limited as far as I know. And then I put some random attack up memoria that I have lying around. Doesn't need to specifically be this, just anything that actually gives some damage on here as well. Specifically on the Oriko, because Oriko is my big damage dealer on this team. What do you do with this team? Well, you just survive. You just survive as long as you can. You rotate your defensive actives every single turn, like every single turn, at least 1 or 2 actives, preferably just 1 if you think you can take it. If your HP drops a little bit, you use Kako. And actually, I've done a run of 100 Evils Challenge 2. I didn't want to do number 3 because that one has a really weird final wave for which I would have to do something else. And this guide is only supposed to be sort of general strategy that you can apply to most hard quests, but of course there will be some hard quests, some EX challenge quests, some 100 Evils where there's some weird stuff going on. For example, on the final wave on 100 Evils 3, there's an Oscar that buffs himself really hard once his allies die. So you would have to either one-shot that thing specifically, which I didn't have the setup for, or if you kill all the other allies, then you have to use a buff cleanse, which, for example, Amiria has. So we would have to put Amiria on this team, maybe instead of the Emiri, to cleanse that buff. So there might be some things that you might have to do differently depending on what sort of fight you're on. But just in general, a sort of team like this basically is invulnerable. Like there's not a whole lot that can actually kill this team ever, so you can just ride out the turns and just keep going until the enemy at some point dies. And this is just completely free-to-play stuff. Of course, like I said, you might not have specifically these memoria, but like one of these is 3-star, like the splash body is 3-star. You can probably get like 4 or 5 of these, even if there's just a singular ones to spread out across your team, and you already have got something to use. And of course, you might just have better stuff instead. You might, for example, have a Madoka, even just a 1-slot Madoka. You can probably slot in instead of the Sana. The main reason I picked up the Sana is because there might be some times where I know the enemy is about to deal a bunch of damage, maybe they're about to use their Magia, then I can instead, before that, use my Sana Magia to give everyone defense up and damage cut and everything to make sure I survive. You could instead do that with Madoka, because Madoka also gives damage cut, and of course Madoka helps a lot more with building MP. Kako is also really good for building MP because she has Axel Draw, which is kind of the king in this strategy, so Kako is definitely a mainstay in this sort of team. But yeah, Madoka will also be really good at this. Just in general, anyone who can heal or be defensive is also really good, like Mayu, for example. Ikumi could also be really good in this. But in general, you can also swap out some of my damage deals that I use. For example, Emiri or Oriko, you can swap out for any other really good 4-star that is like a Magia player. For example, right now Rikaren is running. You can put Rikaren instead of Emiri, for example, if they're 1-slot, 2-slot, and just make sure you can protect them, and you're doing fine as well. So you can, of course, ramp up this team pretty hard, but the main part is that you can like survive, don't immediately die, and that is how you would tackle really hard quests. Now, I did end up beating this quest right here in 57 turns. The 3-star requirement is 40 turns, but keep in mind, this team, I didn't really put that many offensive things on this team. I went full defense, and my Sana is built as full tank, who basically hits for like 0 damage, and instead I would have probably had like something like a Madoka instead, with like maybe 1 or 2 offensive memoria even. And also, none of these characters have Spirit Enhancement, not even a single node. So if, for example, just the Oriko had Spirit Enhancement, that alone would have saved me at least like 7 turns. Because Oriko would deal way more damage and actually get way more MP, so that for just that itself would save a whole bunch of turns. So if you do this yourself, probably give SE to the Oriko. Oriko does really good damage once she's SE'd, but you could also put some SE maybe a little bit on the Manaka, because her active is quite alright for buffing herself. Kako is also really good if you need more defenses, because Kako's active heals the entire team across multiple turns. That's a really good active to have, so that is maybe something you can have. And just in general, you can put more offensive memoria, maybe throw out some of those defensive memoria, like defensive active memoria, for some offensive active memoria. That's like some stuff you can swap around to deal more damage, but at least in general, this is the idea behind a team like this, with just free-to-play resources, and it can definitely go far. But also, once again, this won't beat everything, just because some quests might have some weird stuff in it. Maybe, like I said, in some cases you might need buff cleanse. Amiria does that, for example. Maybe in some cases you need more specific single target damage. Then maybe you swap out, I don't know, once again, swap the Emiri or the Oriko for someone who does more single target damage. Felicia has a single target Magia that can hit pretty hard, for example. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's just a general overview how you beat hard quests. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll see you guys next time.